Welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. How's it going, everybody? I hope you guys are doing great. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the donation of your time to take time to, take a look at the video to see what we have to share today. I'm excited. Today we're finishing up the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections that we've been discussing this past month. We've already gone through 4 of them, and that is, we've talked about generosity, we've talked about ethical discipline, we've talked about patience, and we've talked about enthusiastic effort. Now, before we dive into the meat and potatoes of the video here, if you would please indulge me in a moment of silence so we could ring in, we can ground ourselves down to the energies to really get our minds focused to grasp the message of what's going to be said today, because the last 2 of the 6 perfections are really very important to understand, to know, to cultivate into your daily life, right? So without any further ado, let's ring in. Nam-myo renge kyo, Nam-myo renge kyo, Nam-myo renge kyo. Eternal Buddha Shakyamuni, please guide us. Any beings connected to ourselves here, just please guide us. Let us all guide each other. Let us get grounded here. Thank you. Okay, now that we've called out to the energies and to ground ourselves down, to allow them, the walls to come down to the walls of your ears, the walls of your mind, so that we can really grasp what's going to be said today. And I'm excited. So so like I said, we've gone through 4 of the 6 perfections, and we've been taking a lot of this of what is being said, taking out of the text of the commentary by Geshe Sonam Rinchen, and which is the book, The 6 Perfections. So it's really insightful. They got a really good message in here, because they use a lot of the philosophy that comes from Nagarjuna and his 2 spiritual sons, iadedeus and Chandakirti. So it is it's a lot of information in a little bit of text, but it's so deep and rich, right? So without any further ado, we're going to dive into to the 5th one, and to the 5th perfection, the 5th paramita, if you will. Perfection, paramita in Sanskrit. And so concentration is a strong, enthusiastic effort that, let me set my beads down here. Yeah, so concentration, once a strong, enthusiastic effort has been developed, it must be applied to the cultivation of meditative stabilization, because while slackness and excitement influence our mind, the disturbing emotions can, like carnivorous beasts, attack and devour us. And Shantideva says that, thus, having developed enthusiastic effort, place your mind into meditative stabilization. People whose minds are distracted live between the fangs of the disturbing emotions. And just right off the bat, that is it speaks volumes, because in concentration, to cultivate a meditative stabilization in your daily life, and because remember, meditation is not just sitting in meditation for a while or whatever. Meditation, when they talk about meditation, this is talking about cultivating this in everything that you do. So, in other words, you have to show concentration to everything that you do, you know what I mean? So that you develop that mental thought process of right view, you know what I mean? Because ultimately, that's where it all starts. And your efforts, your actions start right there, you know what I mean? So if you don't have concentration, then you're not thinking about the things that you do in your daily life in a stabilized way. You know what I mean? It's erratic, you know, sporadic here and there, or you choose, you're reacting instead of responding type thing. You know what I mean? Now, both Buddhists and non-Buddhists cultivate meditative stabilization. Okay, so you know, I've always, you know, said when I'm talking about, you know, the things that I talk about, and a lot of it has to do with the Buddhist practice and recovery, right? So because that's my suffering in a sense. So now both Buddhists and non-Buddhists cultivate meditative stabilization. The 8 concentrations of the form and formless realms are also mentioned in non-Buddhist literature. Now, when meditative stabilization is practiced with sincere refuge in the 3 jewels meaning the Dharma, the Sangha, and the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Now, in the Buddhist practice, right? So when practice with an understanding of the disadvantages of cyclical existence and wish to gain freedom, it becomes a cause for liberation. Now, without a calmly abiding mind, it is possible to achieve the states of meditative. It is impossible to achieve the meditative states of stabilization described in Sutra, or to accomplish the stages of generation and completion of Tantra. Now, in fact, it acts as a vessel for higher realization, and I find that to be in my practice. I find that to be something that I notice a lot, that the stabilization of that mental thought process with the practice of doing it and doing this, you know, on the daily basis, it gives you that higher realization. You know what I mean? You really start seeing things in a broad spectrum of how things work in your life. You know what I mean? And why you are where you are, and why you think how you think. You know what I mean? Now, let me see. The achievement of concentration is not an end in itself. It is a key which opens the door to many different practices. The most important, it is used to gain a profound understanding of reality. And that is one of the things that, for me anyway, I find that it gives you that profound understanding of the reality of what's happening in your life. Because as we know that, or anyone who has dealt with addiction and any of the mental health issues knows that it is real easy to get lost in the reality by covering it up in a sense, and you know what I mean? I know, like, for myself, covering it up with the addiction, with using or with whatever, you know, I found that wouldn't allow me to deal with the reality, it was easier to use. You know what I mean? And by practicing on a daily basis, your meditative stabilization and concentration is a big part of that. You know what I mean? It really allows you to dig in to the real you. You know what I'm saying? Because without concentration, you can't find the antidote to your suffering. You know what I mean? It's a very hard thing to do. You know, I mean, you can find an antidote, but to find the one that actually gives you the meditative stabilization so that you have an introspective awareness of what you're doing, so that your right view is really polishing up, and you start viewing things in that way. You know what I mean? Because I know for a lot of years, I was viewing things in the wrong view, even though I thought they were right. It were just a facade of what I was thinking. You know what I'm saying? And so, since cyclical existence is synonymous with suffering, the only way to rid ourselves of suffering is to gain freedom from cyclical existence. Now, the ignorance that lies at its root cannot be eradicated except by gaining special insight into the nature of reality. And that's getting into the nature of your suffering. You have to deal with your suffering to find the antidote to rid the suffering. You know what I'm saying? And it goes back. You know, I know that in the early days of recovery, if I didn't put the time in, if I didn't use what was there and do it on a daily basis. I mean, that's why they say in the rooms of AA, NA, and all the rest of the 12-step programs, it's a one day at a time thing. So if you're doing it one day at a time, then it's a Buddhist practice is perfect for that, because it's about one day at a time. It's about dealing with the here and now every single day. You know what I mean? It's not about just doing it on Monday and you're good for the rest of the week. No, it's a daily grind. You know what I mean? But the more you do it, the more things start clearing up. You know what I mean? Now, such special insight is attainable without development. Well, let me rephrase that. Such special insight is unattainable without development of a calmly abiding mind. Emptiness can be understood without it. But if the understanding is to be sufficiently powerful, it must be both clear and stable, just as clear and steady light is needed to see the details of wall painting in the dark. You know what I mean? It makes me think of my military days when you were asked to do stuff and you had to pay attention to detail. You were trained to pay attention to detail. That was one of the things that was drilled in you as as someone who's in the military. Paying attention to detail is so crucial, because you're not only dealing with you, but you're dealing with everybody else around you. Your moves are dictating somebody else's move. You know what I mean? The things that you do is going to affect the rest of the crew. And that's the same thing here. You know what I'm saying? If you're paying attention to detail, you have a calm, abiding mind, things start looking clearer. And it's only done through concentration. You know what I mean? That's concentration is not something that just happens. It's something that you got to practice. Something that you got to do one day at a time, moment by moment. Because you know why? You're changing moment by moment. It makes sense to do it that way. You know what I mean? And, let's go on here. Now, as we develop a calm, abiding mind, inner distractions are overcome. But first, we must be free from the coarse external distractions created by unwholesome physical and verbal activities. An essential foundation for developing a calmly abiding mind is the observance of ethical discipline, specifically restraint from the 10 harmful activities. Buddhist practice consists of view, meditation, and conduct. Now, view, the correct understanding of reality, is based on meditation and the practice of concentration. The basis for both is ethical conduct. A good practitioner places equal emphasis on all three. Now, that is just having this sense of equanimity in everything that you do. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're doing things in that way, giving the same energy of concentration to everything that you do, is going to give you the equanimity. It's going to give you that calm mind. It's going to give you that clear view. Because once you just start concentrating on one thing more than the other, then guess what? You start leaning. Your mind starts leaning. You know what I mean? And if it's something that's not of virtuous nature, then guess what? Non-virtuous thing starts happening. And we all know what that means is then the results of that is your actions become that. And then you get stuck. That's where you get stuck in that cyclical world of existence, of suffering. And it's a hard thing to do, for people if you don't have a good foundation, if you have a good practice. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's hard. That's why some people. That's why people have a hard time with it, with their suffering. That's why we're stuck in the suffering, because we pay too much attention to certain things. And just to throw this out there, the mental formations of the mind, there's 51 mental formations of the mental thought process, and 26 of those are non-virtuous. 11 of those are virtuous. These are things that are happening to you constantly without you knowing. This is like the behind-the-scenes mental thing. You know what I mean? There's 26 non-virtuous mental formations that you have to deal with on a daily basis, and only 11 virtuous ones. So that means that the majority of the time, your mind is stuck in the non-virtuous world. That's why we're so stuck in this world of cyclical existence that is of suffering at many different levels. You know what I mean? And not too many people practice. Not too many people meditate. And not too many people know about it. You know what I mean? Not a lot of people. It's something that is a rarity in this world that we live in today. I mean, just take a look at social media. Take a look at the news. I mean, there's chaos and just it's terrible. And I know this. And it kind of hits me hard because I was part of that. I was part of that chaos at one point. You know what I'm saying? And I found a better way to rid of the chaotic life that I was living. And it's not an easy road to find if you're stuck in that delusional a mental state of being, right? Especially if you're stuck in the addiction and dealing with these mental health issues like myself, dealing with the addiction, dealing with PTSDs, with dealing with trauma, childhood traumatic experiences, and all of those types of things. So it takes a toll on a person, and the more time that you leave it being, it develops into this, there's only one thing that's going to happen to that. You know what I mean? This is a bunch of negative energy that is at some point it's gonna burst open, and it's either gonna drag you down and keep you down and eventually lead to death, or you're gonna wake up. The wind's gonna blow your way, and you're gonna hear something. You're gonna hear something. You're gonna see something. If that concentration develops in you, and it did for me, you know what I mean. And that's why I talk about the things that I talk about, because if it can work for somebody like myself who is doing the things and living the way I was living, it can happen for anyone. You know what I mean? And so. Yeah, but and the concentration is a big thing, you know what I mean? Now, let's move forward here a little. And I like the way it talks about the ethical discipline in concentration, because that's one of the things that it's a big thing, you know what I mean? It's something that is, ethical discipline is the role of ethics. Role of ethics is important whether one is a lay person or an ordained person. You know what I mean? As humans, we are capable of distinguishing between appropriate and inappropriate actions. Knowing right from wrong. We know that. You know what I mean? That's the ethical discipline in you. Now, because of the world that we live in, a lot of us choose not to listen to it. And those which bring both immediate and ultimate happiness are clearly beneficial and wholesome. Those that bring happiness neither now nor later are indisputably wholesome, as those which bring only short-lived pleasure but ultimate detriment. And those that bring that short pleasure and ultimate detriment, I mean, as in addiction, obviously, that's something that's in the forefront. You know what I mean? That you do this thing to alleviate the suffering, but it only lasts you a little while. You know what I'm saying? And you're back to square one with that suffering, only a little bit heavier this time. And every single time it's a little bit more heavier and more and more. And finally, it gets so heavy that you can't even move. You're just stuck in that misery. You know what I'm saying? I've been there, man, and it's not a beautiful thing to see. You know what I'm saying? Now, again, an ethical lifestyle is essential, since the wind of unwholesome physical and verbal action creates turbulence on the lack of the mind. The waves must die down. Now, for when the surface is still, anything can be mirrored in it. And I like that right there. They said when it's still, when the mind is still, it's like the surface is so still that it can be mirrored. There's like a mirror there. You know what I'm saying? In order to deal with the subtle inner distractions, coarse external ones must first cease. And that stillness will give you that. I remember being in the Persian Gulf one time, or a few times, and in that ocean over there, they call it the glass sea. And it's so still, very hot. Sun beaming down. It's like no ripples in the water. It's so still, it looks like a mirror. And And that's that wind. There's still wind there. It's just non-existent in a sense. You know what I'm saying? Because there's no ripples in the water. It's just so calm and serene. And when your mind is like that, you can see for miles. You can see for miles. And that is and you can see things in the water. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I believe, that's how I relate this part of it to that, because it allows you to see that suffering. It allows you to see what is the cause of this. It allows you to see it in the right view. Even though you're suffering, you can see in the right view. To figure out the antidote. To figure out what is it going to take for me not to suffer of this. You know what I mean? Now, I like to let me get back to the other part here that I wanted to share with you. Now, people often want to concise instruction on how to attain calm abiding and do not see the need to refer to the great texts. But if you are about to take a journey to a distant place, you must either know the way from your own previous experience, or must rely on a good friend or on accurate instructions to guide you. Now, if you just wander off on your own, you are unlikely to reach your destination. You must be equipped with full knowledge of how to practice. Otherwise, you will not recognize obstacles. Now, how to or know how to remove them, or how to enhance the meditative stabilization gained. Your spiritual guide or teacher is essential for this, and if you intend to practice in solitude, your teacher should always be included with the boundary you set around your meditation place. Now, in the summary of the stages of the path, Tongpa says, concentrate is a king with dominion over the mind, or concentration is a king with dominion over the mind. Once placed, immovable like the king of mountains. When directed, it engages with every kind of virtuous object. It induces a great bliss of a malleable body and mind. Knowing this, powerful yogis continually practice meditative stabilization, which defeats all inimitable distractions. Now, that's the part, that last part there, it was really, to me, it's really hits big for recovery. You know what I mean? Because, like it says, people often want concise instructions on how to attain calm abiding and do not see the need to refer to the great text. And it's just the same thing in recovery. A lot of times, a lot of people tend to think that I hear this a lot. They say, I can do this on my own. I don't need to go to the meetings. I don't need the text. I don't need a sponsor. I don't need any of that. And you see them go about their life. And then you see them back in the rooms. And you see them back in a treatment center. And I know this because I've lived that. You know what I mean? I not only seen other people, but myself. I've lived that. You know what I mean? I mean, heck, I've been to three in-house treatment centers, and then and one outpatient. So it's something that I'm very familiar with. And at first, it was just like that. I could do this on my own, you know. Okay, yeah, I did 30 days in the treatment center. Okay, I got it. My head's clean now. I know what I'm doing. And next thing you know, you're back out doing the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Because you diverted. You started seeing things in the wrong view, and refrained from any type of practice, any type of constructive of cultivating things in the right way. You know what I mean? The concentration in that faded in an instant. You know what I mean? And that happens to a lot. People who are in recovery, they get out of these they get out of a treatment center, or they get out of being in the outpatient for a week or whatever, and they get on this little thing that a lot, you probably have heard of this term. They get on that pink cloud and think that they got, they're floating, and next thing you know, it just takes one wrong turn. You know what I mean? It just takes one wrong view to get you back to that cyclical world of suffering. That cycle keeps going and going. You know what I mean? Because you diverted from what got you on the cloud. You know what I'm saying? That's why they say it's one day at a time. It's moment by moment by moment, and that's exactly what happens in Buddhism. It's a practice that is of the mind, because you change moment by moment by moment. You know what I mean? Every day you're different. Every day your mental thought process is different. So you have to adapt. You know what I'm saying? The Buddha himself taught the sutras and his teachings at levels of different capacities, because everybody is different. And he met you where you were at. You know what I'm saying? That's the beauty of this thing, is that it works at any level of your life, wherever you're at, and whatever you do in your life. You know what I mean? Even it works these practices work so well and interrelate very well with other religious practices. You know what I mean? This is a non-discriminatory way of thinking. And that's what it is. It's all about the mind. You know what I mean? Now, I'm going to get going on the next part of this, because we're kind of at the halfway point now. Now, the next paramita, the next perfection that we're going to talk about, is the last one, is the wisdom. And man, when one has gained a calmly abiding mind, the 7 preparatory stages and the concentrations of the form and formless realms can develop. The prime purpose for developing a calmly abiding mind is a basis for special insight. Now, those of the highest caliber use the powerful tool for the analysis of the Four Noble Truths and to investigate reality in order to rid themselves of the disturbing emotions and free themselves from cyclical existence. Now, when such highly development concentration is accompanied not just by lack of attachment to this life, but by lack of attachment to future lives within cyclical existence, it becomes an authentic spiritual path. Since the wish for freedom isn't present, now, when it is accompanied by the altruistic intention, it becomes a bodhisattva practice. Now, once you have a calmly abiding mind, you can sustain concentration even during ordinary activities. The bliss of pliancy reinforces calm abiding, and vice versa. Just as a comfortable bed helps you sleep, just like a comfortable bed helps you sleep well, when you sleep well, the bed feels comfortable. And that's the same thing, you know what I mean? When you have that calm, abiding mind, everything that you do feels like the right thing. You know what I'm saying? When your mind is comfortable, everything you do is of comfort. You know what I'm saying? And you know, Nagarjuna in his 100 verses of wisdom says, the root of all visible and invisible good qualities is wisdom. Thus, to accomplish both of these, hold firmly onto wisdom. I really like that. That's really deep right there to me. You know what I mean? Nagarjuna has such beautiful, deep parables that he has in his sutras. You know what I mean? Because he learned from the disciples, right? That were with the Buddha, and he learned from the Buddha's teachings. You know what I mean? And to see it in a way that you know that he has reached Anuttara Samyaksa Sambodhi. You know what I mean? You know that he has reached this level of samadhi, that he knows, that he sees this, and is giving it to you so that you can cultivate it in your life. Now this is something that was written thousands of years ago. You know what I'm saying? And it fits very, very well with your daily life of the days that we live in today. You know what I mean? Now I'm going to read that one more time. The root of all visible and invisible good qualities is wisdom. Thus, to accomplish both of these, hold firmly onto the wisdom. And that's that right there. Hold firmly onto the wisdom is something that only comes through practice, only comes through concentration, only comes through good ethical discipline, only comes through generosity, comes through patience. You know what I mean? Comes through from all the rest of the 6 perfections. You know what I'm saying? And you can't have any of all those things if you don't have wisdom. And how do you attain wisdom? Is that you get it from somebody else. And you get it through the practice of a daily routine, of a daily spiritual practice, a daily practice of whatever it is that you're dealing with. You know what I mean? And in recovery, that's the same way. You can't attain sobriety if you don't have the wisdom to do so. And how do you get the wisdom? You involve yourself in the literature. You involve yourself in helping the addict who still suffers. You involve yourself in being involved with the community, being involved with a home group, being involved with a sponsor, and being a mentor. If you know what I'm saying? It's all of those things come into play. Because when you're doing it by yourself, you can get really unmotivated really quick and your wisdom diminishes. You know what I'm saying? You can have a lot of wisdom, but if you're not out there sharing it and not dealing with it on a daily basis, it gets packed up and stays there. It stays there until you have another episode of suffering. And you're like, wow, why? Again? And then you're like, oh. When you go through another treatment center or whatever, right? And then you get reminded. You know what I'm saying? You hear somebody's sermon at church or something and it just pops the light bulb in you. It's like, oh man, I forgot about that. Let me get back to that. Kind of draws you in, you know what I'm saying? And, but yeah, so, and let me keep on going here. Now, a complete understanding of reality frees us from cyclical existence. But even partial understanding leads to happiness in good rebirth. It is therefore wise to investigate the nature of reality, particularly the nature of the self. In yogic deeds, the bodhisattva, in the yogic deeds of bodhisattvas, iadedeus says, correct perception leads to the supreme state, some perception to good rebirth. The wise, thus, will expand their intelligence to think about their inner nature. I like that. See that? The wise, thus, always expand their intelligence to think about their inner nature. You know what I'm saying? When you start polishing that wisdom, when you start gaining more wisdom, you not only start dealing with the external things, but it starts bringing you in here. Because you have to know self so that self can help another self. You know what I'm saying? You have to, and that's why, meditation is really harped on in Buddhism, because it's all about the mind. And the only way to know what's up with the mind is through meditation and the practice of the teachings. And to involve yourself in a sangha, in a community of like-minded people, to share wisdom and knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the only way to get yourself out of an addictive situation, is to find out who has done it. You know what I'm saying? If you look at the literature, somewhere in the literature of those books, the AA and the NA book, says that rarely have we seen someone fail when they follow the path that's there. And it's the same thing here. Rarely will you see someone fail if they follow the path that has been laid out before you. And that is the teachings of the sutras of the Buddha, and the bodhisattvas, that because the Buddha got all his knowledge from Buddhas of the past. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the Flower Adornment Sutra. I don't know if anyone knows about the Flower Adornment Sutra, but this sutra is it's about a practitioner of the Buddhist faith, right? That Sudanya, this Sudanya is a youth who attained Anuttara Samyaksa Sambodhi, and he wanted to know how did the Bodhisattvas practice. So he went on to this path, going from one person to the next, and each one kept sending him down to the next to gain all this wisdom and knowledge. You know what I mean? To reach Buddhahood, or to Buddha nature, you know what I mean? To be enlightened, and it's just a beautiful story. It's a vast amount of information in that book on the sutras of Dormant Flower Dormant Sutra. But that's the gist of it is about Sudanya finding the path of how to practice to be a bodhisattva. What do they do? How do they do it? How long does it take? So he's going through all these people, and there are all these enlightened beings. You know what I'm saying? Who have been there, and gotten this stuff from other enlightened beings. So it's the same thing as the 12-step programs. You know what I'm saying? you're only, you can only know by somebody who has been there. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's going to give you the wisdom. That's what's going to give you that intellect to understand how to deal with yourself. You know what I'm saying? And because it really is a deep mental transformation in and not only for addiction and mental mental health issues, but for just anybody. You know what I mean? Anybody who's out there. You know what I'm saying? Everybody suffers at some degree. You know what I'm saying? And to minimize that in this world, that in this lifetime that you're here, is always a good thing to bring about that good nature of you. You know what I mean? And that's the Buddha nature. And yeah, so it's really cool stuff, man. Let me move on here. Now it says, many people don't even begin to wonder about the nature of reality, which is that all things lack inert existence, and at the same time function in a perfectly satisfactory way. Even a positive doubt regarding the tears of cyclical existence, or not tears, but tears the fabric of cyclical existence apart. Now, you may ask why, because for a brief moment, during which we wonder whether it is true, we take reality to mind. The small effort may eventually lead us to establish the nature of reality of ourselves through scriptural passages and reasoning. And that's one of those things that even when you're in that suffering, you have those moments, those days where you're just like, man, it's got to be something. Life has to be better than this. You know what I mean? And just for that moment, you're contemplating. And that's the good part. Because you did contemplate, you allowed the energies to come in. You know what I mean? And that's a seed. That's a seed that is going to flourish one day. You know what I'm saying? And especially for people who are dealing with mental health issues and especially addiction, I know that feeling. You know what I'm saying? To be there when you're using every day of your life and you're just like hating it, but you're still doing it. You know what I'm saying? You get to that point. You get to that point where you're just like sick of doing what you're doing, but you can't stop doing it. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a surreal, helpless feeling that you never thought you would be at that point. You know what I'm saying? And suddenly you find yourself there and you're just like, for a moment, you're like, what happened? How? Why? And that's what happened for me. You know what I mean? I could remember sitting in a park one day and just wondering, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And I remember crying out, whatever's out there, whether it's a God, whether it's energy, whatever it is that's out there, help me, do something for me, change my mind, do something for me. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like I didn't know, because I had already gone through 3 treatment centers. It's not like I didn't know what to do. I just needed to get reminded, and lo and behold, I did. I got reminded, and wound up in another treatment center, and I'm still sober today. You know what I mean? From the last time I've went, which is beautiful to me, and that's why I share. I share the things that have helped me, because these 6 perfections is one of the things that is that has helped my sobriety and keeps me in this mode. You know what I mean? Because it's something that I do on a daily basis. It's not something that I just, read a book here and meditate for 2 minutes there and whatever. No, this is something that I vowed to do. You know what I'm saying? And for some people, that's what needs to happen. For myself, it's just a personal preference. It's a personal thing that I feel that this is what I need to do. And I made a vow to myself and to the community that I deal with that I'm going to practice the Buddha, I'm going to practice Buddhism. And not just go into to hearing one time at the Buddhist temple to hearing somebody preach or talk or whatever. No, this is something that I made a vow to practice. And I said to myself, if I can use every single day of my life, if I can do that, and I did for 5 years. 5 years straight, I used every single day of my life. In my last, when I relapsed the last time, I was a sober for 10 years and then relapsed and stayed, in the addiction for 5 years. I used every single day of my life for 5 years after that relapse. And I said, man, if I could do that's concentration. You know what I'm saying? That's concentration. That's mindfulness. That's discipline. That's ethical discipline. And that's the 6 paramitas, all of it. It was just doing the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections, with the wrong view. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the practice comes in. That's where the meditation comes in. Because I didn't meditate when I did that. I was doing all these things. I was being generous to myself by using every day and helping others use. And I was concentrating and being mindful to the wrong things, the wrong view. And because the 6 perfections were just the actions. I hadn't perfected any of them. I hadn't perfected any of the 6 paramitas. You know what I'm saying? I was still at the low end of the totem pole, man. I was still at the low end of the totem pole. I hadn't perfected a darn thing. You know what I'm saying? And I still haven't. You know what I mean? I'm working on it. You know what I mean? But I'm doing a whole lot better. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, it's a daily thing. It's not something that I can perfect all the way down. It's a lifetime of doing something, and for me anyway, that's just my personal experience and my vow to myself, my vow to the practice, my vow to everybody I come in contact with, because I want to be able to give you some energy that is of good use. I don't want to give you this ugly, evil energy that I used to carry with me. You know what I mean? And I did that a lot. I shared that energy, and it was, I think about it a lot. I contemplate that. But that's one of the things that I contemplate on my suffering. I contemplate on the things that were of the wrong view, so that I get the right view can be that much more enhanced. You know what I mean? And only through the wisdom and concentration does that happen. You know what I'm saying? And just to give you a real quick a view, a part of the view in a form of text. I'm going to give me a second. I'm going to grab these books so I can show you. I just want to show you this real quick. Okay, I'm back. Okay. Now, just this year, we're what? We're up to August now, right? So that's like 8 months. So, including this book right here, I've read all of these books this year. Take a look. All of these books, I've read every single one of these books. They're pretty thick books too. That's a lot of wisdom. That's a lot of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? And I don't show you this to brag. I show you this to show you the consistency of doing it every single day. That's what happens when you do something every day. You read literature like this, and all of this gives you insight. It gives you insight to know you. You know what I'm saying? You get to know you so that you can help somebody else. You know what I'm saying? It's just beautiful to me how the cause and effect of the good view makes you really brings out the 6 paramitas in you. You know what I'm saying? And that's part of being a bodhisattva, is to attain the 6 paramitas, to perfect the 6 paramitas, so that you attain Anuttara Samyaksa Sambodhi, Samadhi, and the rest of it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that you obtain, but it's just these levels of doing it. And that's what happens. You have to do it in the level that it's supposed to be done. You know what I'm saying? And this is the same thing that happens when you're dealing with a 12-step program, when you're dealing with recovery of any sort. Is that you have to start somewhere. And you start with the people who have been there and done that. You gather the wisdom of those pioneers, you know what I'm saying? And the people that are in the rooms helping you, you know? You have to look at those people with reverence. You know what I'm saying? You look at them with reverence, and when you do that, when you look at those people, which to me, they're your teachers. You know what I mean? At some level, they're your teachers. They're your teachers. They're your whoever, whatever you want to call them. You know what I'm saying? But they're the people that you're learning from. You're gathering their wisdom, mixing it with yours, and when you put in more wisdom, it starts purifying yours. You know what I'm saying? That's part of it. You start purifying your own sense of you. And it allows you to really live your life in a different way and see things in a different way. And it's just, I don't know, it just makes you want to live different. You know what I'm saying? It really does. And I wanted to just, you know, again, like wisdom is the eye of seeing profound suchness. And I'm just going to read again the last part of what I read about Nagarjuna, or let's just talk a little bit more about this here. Now, in the yogic deeds of Bodhisattvas, Iadedeus says, correct perception leads to the supreme state. Some perfection to good rebirths. This wise thus expands their intelligence to think about the inner nature. Again, that was what we were talking about, is that it expands your intelligence to understand what's happening in your life, inside of you, in your mental capacity, so that you can clear that up. You know what I'm saying? Now, by knowing reality, we eventually reach the supreme state of enlightenment. But even a little knowledge of it derived from studying the teachings and reflecting on them can help us attain a good rebirth. Iadedeus thus advises all with intelligence to meditate on the nature of self. The various great texts of the Middle Way differ regarding the order in which they present the salient points to be considered in relation to reality. However, if you wish to investigate the nature of reality yourself, you cannot do better than to follow the steps described by Nagarjuna in his treatise of the Middle Way. First, become conversant with them and then implement them. I really like that, because what that's saying is that when you do something, when you pick up some wisdom, when you hear something for the very first time, when it's a new practice perhaps, when it's perhaps even a new suffering, you meditate on that. You contemplate that. Because when you contemplate that, you're thinking about every angle of what's going on there. You know what I'm saying? How did I wind up here again? What is it that I did? What did I do? What did I not do? What can I do better? How can, it just goes on and on. You know what I'm saying? It's the cause and effect in that is beautiful, because it allows you to find the antidote. You know what I mean? Now, I've done that many times, man, and it's really something that has helped. You know what I'm saying? And it still helps. There's still things that I do today in my meditative practice and in my spiritual practice and in my recovery. You know what I'm saying? I contemplate and I do things on the daily basis. Now, Nagarjuna's purpose was to encourage, right? And in Tongspa's summary of the stages of the path says, wisdom is the eye foreseeing profound suchness. It is the path which totally uproots worldly existence, and the treasure of knowledge praised in all the scriptures. Renowned as the finest lamp to dispel the darkness of confusion, knowing this, the wise who seek liberation cultivate this path with every effort. And that's really deep to me, man, because it tells you right away, wisdom is the eye for seeing profound suchnesses. The suchness. Now, you can't see if you don't have wisdom. And the second line was, it is the path which totally uproots worldly existence and the treasures of knowledge praised in all the scriptures. Now, you can't uproot worldly existence. You can't understand. You don't know what the root is if you don't have the wisdom, if you don't cultivate, if you don't practice. You know what I'm saying? And then you won't know how to deal with it when you get to the root if you don't have the treasure of knowledge praised in all the scriptures. And the scriptures don't only have to be of Buddhist texts. It could be of any scriptures that you're dealing with. You know what I mean? So long it's of good, virtuous action. You know? It could be things in whatever spiritual practice you're doing. Even the books, literature in any of the 12-step programs. That's part of it. You know what I mean? And all of those things, like it says here, renowned as the finest lamp to dispel the darkness of confusion, because that's what wisdom does, man. It dispels that confusion in your mental thought process for you to see things in the right view. And in turn there, get the correct action, right? Now, knowing this, the wise who seek liberation cultivate this path with every effort. Beautiful stuff, man. Beautiful stuff. Now, that is the end of talking about the 6 perfections, the 6 paramitas, man. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you got something out of that today. I really appreciate you guys giving me your time today. I really do. I just love talking about these things because it's something that is very near and dear to me in my life today. And it has given me a new life. It has given me a second chance, if you will. It has liberated my mind to look at life in the right view. You know what I mean? In turn there, my actions reflect. And that's the energy that I want to give out there. That's the energy that I want to give to people when they meet me, when they come in contact with me. I want you to feel that radiance of that energy, you know, so that you can take some of that and cultivate it in your life so that, you know, you too can have these beautiful days. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, again, thank you for the donation of your time. At this time, if you would please just hit that subscribe button. Just know that click subscribe and go like and go subscribe and share the channel. It's the only way we can help other people and share the message to the addict who still suffers, to help those people who are starving for some spiritual guidance. You know what I'm saying? Perhaps you just need that pep, a little push in your life. You needed to hear that word of encouragement, right? That's what we want to do here. Is we want to help everybody, all be sentient beings. We want to help alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings, including your own. Now, again, if you just indulge me, and so that we can ring out, and we'll call it. We'll wrap it up. Okay. Nam myo renge kyo, nam myo renge kyo, nam myo renge kyo. Eternal Buddha Shakyamuni, thank you for guiding us. Good afternoon. Thank you all for guiding each other. Hope you guys have a good day. Thank you. Alrighty, so I guess we are done for today. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. Until the next time, when the smoke clears, I am the Recovery Plug.